Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Game Hump here on Wednesday. It's Game Huggers. We are here to chat about gaming. What an exciting time, what an amazing time it is to be alive, because here on the Game Huggers, we've got Benjamin Cleats. Say hi, Ben.
What's up, everybody? How are you doing?
That's enough of him. And then we've also got Tony. That's right, I said his name 3 times. That's how important he is.
Yeah, and then when he says it, I appear. I don't know why that happens. It just does.
Tony and Ben are going to join me this week on the Game Hump. We're doing a live stream. I see 1 or 2 viewers just popped in listening to the show this week. That's awesome. On the YouTubers, we link that as well on the Facebook page. You can always follow me on Twitter and recommend and request things as we're doing the show live if you have any kind of comments or suggestions for us. And I am at _Joshua Turbo. Do not forget the underscore, as it is the most important underscore in all of the internet. So what we're going to do this week is going to be kind of cool. It's going to be something neat and fun. We're going to do 10 topics. That's right. In the hour that we got the 3 of us here sitting down, we're going to talk about 10 different things. And that means we got to kind of do it a speed round. This is kind of like it's the final countdown. We have to go quickly through these topics. So we're going to jump into each one. We're going to talk about it for a little bit, and then before too long, you know what's going to happen, Tony? We're going to move on to the next one. So don't get too hot and bothered, Ben Cleats. Don't get too angry, Tony, because just when you're getting all comfortable and starting to understand what we're talking about, I'm going to change the question. So you guys ready?
What a dick.
You know it.
I know it. I know it. You know it.
Let's do this.
Let's do this. Ben, our first topic is video game movies that don't suck. Let me hear you.
Video game movies that don't suck. Ooh.
Okay.
You know, the Street Fighter movie was really good.
I disagree.
Not
Both.
the live action.
Oh, you mean Street Fighter 2, the anime movie? Well, let's do. Okay, let's not talk about anime movies because there are a dozen, at least, of video game movies that were animes that were actually really, really good. I can think of a bunch off the top of my head. The Tekken movie was awesome. Fatal Fury, Art of Fighting, Street Fighter 2, East Book 1 and 2. Those animes are actually really, really well done.
Going live action, just Western.
Live action, when they brought them out in the movie theater, I'm talking Street Fighter Chun-Li. I'm talking Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Talking about Dragon Ball Evolution. Never mind.
Dragon Ball?
Actually, I like Doom. Like that movie.
Rock?
Yeah. For some reason, I really like that movie. Just because it only had 5 minutes of like first-person shooter. Like, they gave you enough to be like, that's awesome. But they didn't, do it too long, so everyone's puking motion sickness in the theater.
That's true.
Yeah. And, I just like the casting. They, casted, everyone pretty well, and the plot wasn't as jumbled up as usually most video game movies are. So.
That's true. Tony, how about you? What it would be, and this is the thing, it doesn't have to be movies that are genuinely excellent or really, really well done. They could just be movies that you enjoy.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you 2, and there are only 2. The original Mortal Kombat movie and the original Street Fighter movie, the live-action one, Jean-Claude Van Damme. And the reason why I say that one is because it is completely cheesy and it owns it.
Well, you know what? That's your opinion, dude. It's a wrong opinion, but it is your opinion.
I like it better than, say, Blood Rain or Postal.
Yeah.
Man was bad.
Matt mentioned Deadpool. I don't even know what he's talking about.
That's a comic book movie.
That's a comic book movie. He's got no clue what he's talking about.
It's also one of the best romantic movies you could ever take a date on.
Oh, absolutely. Deadpool is an amazing movie.
That's the best Valentine's Day, Christmas, and Easter movie altogether.
I got a game movie. And it's interesting, too, because I am entertained by really abysmal, terrible, obscure movies. I love the 80s and 90s, those B-movies. A lot of those action, science fiction movies really, really get to me. I love those. I liked Super Mario Brothers. I know it's awful, but trust me, Street Fighter the movie is a worse movie than Super Mario Brothers. But the movie that I want to talk about that I actually think is a fun video game movie is Double Dragon.
That's what I've been meaning to see.
Oh, it's awful, but it's so funny. It's so funny. The dialogue in the movie, the characters, the campiness of it. I mean, Abobo's in it. The T-1000, the character, the guy who played the T-1000 in Terminator 2 is in it. There's a lot of really good. Alyssa Milano's in it. She plays like Maria. It's crazy because it's not really the Double Dragon storyline. What they did is they took Double Dragon, the Billy and Jimmy, and they put them in like the year 2020, and it's post-apocalyptic, and the world's all ran by gangs, and all this stuff's going on, and it's so fun because it's all of those B movies from the early 90s, late 80s that were trying to predict what the future would be like, and everything's neon, and the gangs are taking these super drugs that make them huge and muscly, and all kinds of stuff's going on. The soundtrack's really fun. Of course, everyone's listening to late 80s hip-hop and R&B in the year 2020. It just makes sense. And of course, everyone's dressed like they're in the 80s because they got the jean jackets and the neon shoes and everything. It just makes sense, and it's really fun. I think it's terrible, but it's a fun movie. I love watching it.
Here's one that I love because how close to it is to the material is Silent Hill, the first movie, not number 2.
Of what? Mortal Kombat?
Silent Hill.
Oh, nice.
Silent Hill, it's a great movie. A good standalone movie that keeps somewhat close to what the actual games were about.
And that one kind of slides under the radar a lot, too.
Yeah. Like, I remember it coming out and everyone loving it.
I remember it being really, really dark. Like, crazy dark.
Yeah. It was dark. But then the second one came out.
Pyramid Head, when Pyramid Head like grabbed that girl and by the neck and ripped her skin off, like that was disgusting. Like, oh my god.
Well, of course, back then they went for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that one being really creepy and really disturbing for sure. I think the Resident Evil movies are pretty good too, actually. They're not bad.
The first like 3 are pretty good. After that, it kind of just gets way too over the top.
Was it Afterlife, I think?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
The problem is, of course, the game geek in me is sitting there screaming, it doesn't work that way. That's not how it happened. But
right.
At the very least, it's like, oh, look, it's Jill Valentine. We all know who that is.
Yeah. All right. The Coleco Chameleon. Now, let me give you a little bit of a backstory here if you're like, what the hell's a Coleco Chameleon? A few months ago, and we actually talked about this for a little while on this podcast, there was a small group of guys trying to make a video game system that was cartridge-based in the year 2015-2016. It was called the Retro VGS. The concept of the system, it has some merit. Like it's an interesting idea. They want to bring out a new system now, here in this current year, that will play cartridge games. The idea is that you don't have to worry about your console being online. You don't have to worry about DLC because the games that will come out in cart form, they will never be able to be updated. They will be 100% finished when you get them. And it'll be a game system that you can collect cartridges for. And they're going to release like unreleased Super Nintendo games and old school games, those type of games that you see on retro consoles, but they'll be available again in 2016. And it bombed so bad because they were attempting to do an Indiegogo and a Kickstarter. I believe they tried Kickstarter first and it failed, and then they went to Indiegogo. And with Indiegogo, you don't have to have a working prototype of your system. So they were asking for a really ridiculous amount of money, something like $250,000, and got like $75,000 of that. They didn't have a working prototype, and people were just like, well, there's just not enough information here, not enough to go by to really throw my money at. And the system, I think, was $250. They wanted like you're going to get USB ports for controllers. It's going to have HDMI out and all sorts of regular RCA outs, and it's going to take it's also in a Jaguar Atari Jaguar shell. The system was built inside of a Jag shell because they bought the rights or the die to press those Jag shells. And when it came time, when they weren't going to make that Indiegogo or that Kickstarter, that amount that they were looking for 30 days, they produced this really low quality, horrifically budget prototype video to prove that they had something made. And basically, it was an Android inside of a Jag shell that was basically showing off emulators, and it was a joke. And so the whole thing disbanded. They gave everybody their money back and said, or at least gave some people their money back. Some people were willing to allow them to keep their money because they actually wanted to see this thing come through as a system being released. But they dropped the whole thing and it just disappeared. And then about 3 weeks ago, now this was last year, this is like November, December, and it just disappeared. And then about 3 weeks ago, all of a sudden this thing emerged called the Coleco Chameleon. And they said, now we've got Coleco backing it, which is true, and it's also not true. The name Coleco is not a company anymore. It is just a holding company that owns names like Coleco or whatever other companies that are defunct now that don't exist anymore, that is owned by companies that just release that name out to things like those chip on a board type systems like the Coleco flashbacks or the Atari flashbacks. Sega that has those game systems that come out. You can buy them at Walgreens or dollar stores and stuff like that, where they have a whole system on a chip with like 40 games lifts on it, and it's like straight to your TV. It's a retro console, but it's new. I mean, those are the type of things that wound up getting the rights to those names. It's not like you're really making a Coleco system. You just get the rights to the name, and you can make whatever off of it. So this company, these guys, the Retro VGS guys, are renting the name Coleco to slap it on a system. And they claim that the prototype is ready, and they're ready to start another Indiegogo. And this time the price has dropped to $135. Have you guys heard anything about this?
Yeah, I've heard quite a bit about this one. Like, I've kind of watched the story unfold kind of the same way you described it. And I'm kind of two schools of thought with this thing. Like, part of me is sitting here going, this could be like the Ouya, which, a lot of promise, but when it kind of came out, a lot of the games didn't draw that group interest in there.
The Ouya's awesome.
Well, that's what I mean, though, but like the mass appeal of the software.
You're the only one that owns it in like a 500-mile radius.
That's true.
But the other thing is, it could be a cool concept system, but it really comes down to what games they get involved. Because I think like Read Only Memories at one point was in talks with Retro VGS and a few other. Like, I want to say Pure Solar was part of that as well.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Which those would be really interesting to have on kind of its own console, but. Like, everything about how they've handled the campaigns, how they've done this, just feels so weird. And I can't figure out why.
It has a very serious amount of dirtiness to it. It feels like it's a scam. And they're trying to alleviate some of that by being at the New York Toy Fair this last week, maybe it was 2 weeks ago. And they tried to show off the prototype of this Coleco Chameleon at the Toy Fair. And they had a system hooked up. It looked like a Jag, and it had its own little cartridge inside of it. And enough video of it was released online where people ripped it to pieces, and you can pull little pictures or images from the video and find that they're worse scam artists than you might even be afraid that they are, because they basically took a mini Super NES, which is a smaller version, the second version of the Super Nintendo that came out in the US. They pulled the guts of it out. They pulled the guts out and then slapped it inside of an Atari Jag shell, and they electrical taped over the back of it, and then they electrical taped a Jaguar cartridge case over top of a Super Nintendo EverDrive, an SD card EverDrive, and put it inside of the Jag, and then had that running at their show. And all the games that they were showing, while they were incredibly unimpressive looking, like they were just demos of various versions of Pong and Asteroids and things like that, but they were running homebrew games that were running on a Super Nintendo. We're not even sure if they'd even made them. They might have been prototypes from games that have been in development for who knows how long for the Super NES. But they were written for Super Nintendo. Inside of that Jag shell was a Super Nintendo. And they had an off-brand Super Nintendo controller is what they were using, even though they were trying to kind of keep it out of sight. But it was the thing about it, and this is bad. Like, it is horrible, like how bad this looks. But the thing about it is they may genuinely need money from a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo thing like this to create a concept, an actual idea, an honest-to-God system. Like, they may create an Android device that will accept cartridges. That is my guess is what they're going to probably make. For $135, that would be kind of fun still anyway. It would be neat. But the way that they put together this prototype was awful. Like, the worst thing they could possibly have done.
And I think that's the problem. Bad. That's, like, the problem with it. It's one of these, like, I feel like their hearts are in the right place with the idea of, you know, hey, retro's been making such a big comeback, let's try to do something new with it. But I look at kind of some of the other retro-type systems we've seen, like Japan has the Retro Freak and other kind of Android-based systems like that can do it very well. It's one of those where I'm like, I want it to work, but at the same time, it's just really hard to, like, not look at this and just go, what are you doing?
It's weird.
Like
Yeah.
Josh knows my take on the VGS, and that's a pile of shit. This sounds like a pile of shit. I think they're just they're just trying to be like, all right, guys, we're gonna make homebrews, but you're going to have to play them on our system instead of just spending $10 and getting like an Atari homebrew. Like, they're not gonna make any money. The system costs way too much for what they fucking want to do. If I want to spend $130 on a system, I'll probably just buy like a Nintendo with like 30 fucking games for it. I don't know. I think they need to realize that they can't scam people, and people can see that.
Well, and that's kind of the challenge. It's one of those where there is retro. Retro's big right now. I mean, like you said, bust out a Nintendo, let's have a fun day. But could something like a retro system work today? Maybe. But it depends on what type of market you're going for. Because there are plenty of people that still like playing ColecoVision, which I'll admit I never had one, never had interest. But
Coleco is a very good system. It also has a really bustling homebrew community. And one of the most recent things, the Coleco flashbacks that have come out, I believe they're by At Games or whatever company makes those, includes some homebrews on it, and most recent ones all the way up until like 2013. And they're actually really good games. They're actually like almost NES quality, and one of them is a shoot 'em up. And I had it at EverCon, and I'll definitely have it again at LinkCon later this year. They're actually really I was like super impressed with it. I might even wind up doing some videos of it for the YouTube channel. Like, that's how actually impressive it is. So Coleco it was one of those systems that was really, really powerful for its time. It was more powerful than the Atari, but it was, in a very similar situation like the Master System was. The Master System was supposedly a more powerful system with better sound quality and better graphical qualities than the NES, but the NES destroyed it. I mean, the Atari 2600 destroyed the Intellivision and the Coleco, even though both the Coleco and the Intellivision were more powerful systems.
yeah. So that's kind of the challenge. You can never tell what a market's going to do.
Yep. All right. Why don't we take a chill, like relax a moment here instead of jumping into a real hot topic. We're just going to talk about some of our recent purchases, our recent gaming. What are we gaming lately? Benjamin, why don't you go first?
All right. I picked up a brand new 3DS, the new 3DS.
Nice.
You can tell by this one button that doesn't move at all.
The mouse pad?
I don't know what it is.
It's a C nub, or
stick?
like a C stick.
Yeah,
The nub? The C nub?
The
but
nub.
I picked up Fire Emblem Fates, great game. Pokemon Ruby, Omega Ruby
Wow.
for the big, year-long thing they're doing. They're giving away free Pokemon in the games. They're coming out with new cards. They're doing all this 20th anniversary stuff.
Oh, Ben, I don't play that Digimon shit.
Hey, get out of here. And the new Triforce Heroes Zelda.
Oh, cool. Zelda Arcade. Nice.
I also picked up Mega Man Legacy Collection. So I've been playing a lot of Nintendo games recently.
Nice. There you go, dude. Very cool.
All right. Like Ben, I also picked up Fire Emblem Fates, but I got my hands on the special edition. So
Ooh, nice.
I needed all 3 games in one. I'm sitting there going, for $80 I get everything. Done. Just tell me when I can give you money. On top of that, I've picked up a few other games. So you might remember last time I was here, I had mentioned The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky.
Yep.
So I finally finished that. I actually beat a game. This will never happen
What?
again.
What?
So that ends on a very massive cliffhanger, kind of like the Golden Sun games. So I picked up the 2nd chapter, and I'm hoping to start that in the next few months.
Awesome. Very, very cool.
And then I picked up Project Cross Zone 2.
Oh, I want that so bad.
Which, for those who don't know, Project Cross Zone basically tries to mash up every Namco, Bandai, Sega, Capcom, and even some Nintendo characters into a giant strategy RPG. The only difference is when you go into a fight, the goal is to juggle the enemy as much as you can to rack up damage. So it plays more like a fighting game. But as far as the stories on these go, they're like the most ridiculous fan fictions you can think of. And just everybody knows everybody for some reason.
That's really cool. I've seen like all the characters, and I've seen like what like a lot of people that are really excited about it, but I've never played it. I've never seen it, any footage of it either. So that sounds really interesting to me.
I'm hoping, because I've been trying to do a lot more like game blogging stuff. So I'm actually going to be doing a write-up of it hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So once it's out, I can certainly let people know.
That's awesome. And what's the game blog called?
So I called it Skippy on Games. I have no reason why. I just like calling myself Skippy. So you can find it at skippyongames.wordpress.com.
Awesome.
So lately I've just been kind of checking out different games and spouting off nonsense about it and making all kinds of horrible jokes.
So the whole world can know what it's like to be Tony's friend.
Yeah.
At least your jokes are better than some people's.
Oh God, yeah. Some people. We
I
will
would
say
say
a name
some
that we will
jokes.
never mention.
We will never name.
I would say go ahead and read it first, Ben, and then you can come back and tell me that to my face.
All right.
But
I just
that's kind of
logged off. Oh,
But that's
God.
kind of some of the big ones. The only other one I really picked up was Final Fantasy Explorers, which is kind of
cool.
Monster Hunter with a Final Fantasy skin on it.
Oh, cool.
I heard
Interesting.
they like dumbed down the complexity of the battle system, but they have more equipment you can build.
Basically,
one?
yeah. It's a lot simpler. Like, Monster Hunter is known for being this type of game you need to learn all the mechanics. You will not understand this. And Explorers, I found, is very much a pick-up. Here's how you get started. Here's how you do things. Go.
Awesome. I have recently gotten I got a new Genesis game. It was a fan-translated version of a Japanese action RPG called Monster World 4. It's a really, really good one. I picked that up recently from a friend who makes reproductions of games that were fan translations. That one, and I'm waiting for a mail call from the mailman for a copy for the Genesis of the game Musha, which is a really, really, really popular, well, I shouldn't say popular, really expensive, hard to find shoot 'em up that was really, really well done. A compile shoot 'em up. That's one of the holy grails for the Genesis. I can't wait to get that. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's by the same team that did like Blazing Lasers or Spriggan or a few other games like that on the PC Engine. I think Space Mega Force on the Super Nintendo was a game they did as well. And then the big purchase for me, which happened actually in January, but I purchased it from Japan, which wound up taking its sweet time over here, and it just arrived a week ago, was a PCFX video game console. And then I got my first game for that is Blue Breaker on the PCFX, which we've talked about on the podcast a few times, but maybe Tony and Ben don't know. It's a smaller, lesser-known console that came out in Japan only, and a very, very large majority of the games on it were strategy, comic book simulator, dating sims, and RPGs. There were very few action games, but there is a growing community of homebrew and translation and developers for the PC Engine and PCFX systems, which have very similar architecture. And a lot of those games we're starting to see getting translations. So it's really cool to see games that were on the PC Engine, say like Galaxy Fraulein Yuna, which is a beautiful, beautiful game, but we don't actually have the ability to play it unless you have the ability to read and speak Japanese. Well, those games are starting to be translated now, and there's a few games that I'm looking forward to playing that are going to be on the PCFX soon. So something kind of cool, very, very small niche type of market, type of games, but when you run a lot of game conventions and you have a lot of friends that are into gaming and stuff, or you run a YouTube channel where you can share that kind of stuff with the masses, it's really cool for me because I get to share that stuff with you guys. So maybe we'll see more of that stuff soon.
Now that I could get excited for.
Yeah, indeed. So why don't we talk a little bit more about the Fire Emblem games that you guys got? There was a little bit of controversy too, wasn't there? Something recently Ben was trying to talk about earlier.
Yeah, it's people are yelling about censorship because Nintendo America, they took out the petting relationship minigame where you just pet their face and they like you more.
Hold on, whoa. Did you just say petting minigame?
Yes.
Okay, continue.
And there was some side conversations with some side players that they couldn't translate correctly. So they just took it out and added dots to their whole conversation, to the ones that they couldn't get. So they just were like, we can't do this. We're still going to ship it out. And people are freaking out about this. About something that has nothing to do with the storyline or gameplay. And I'm like, whatever.
Well, kind of the challenge with the controversy, because I'll admit I've been following this way too much for my own good, is, like, for instance, the petting minigame, basically the idea was you'd invite somebody to your private quarters and hang out with them. And, of course, in Japan, there's a lot more, like, intimate contact. So the idea could be like, hey, Josh, come hang out for a little bit. I respect you. And just kind of pet them. And it would build, like, of course, support levels with your character, which in turn make them like your character more. You can get married to characters, etc. Some of the translation stuff has also been, like, names got changed. Certain conversations got removed because of certain connotations, possibly with a comedian who had a recent favorite pastime. Yes, I'm trying to allude a little bit. And kind of a few of the, like, pieces of dialogue, like Ben was saying, they kind of changed them into more of a joke. So, like, the one I think you were referring to, Ben, is there's two ninja characters that try to talk.
Yeah, and
so they played up.
They don't talk at all.
So they played up the idea that, of course, ninjas are silent, so it's just one giant silent conversation.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of people that are screaming, you know, the translation of this game should be perfect. Don't change anything, just translate and bring it over. And then other people like me are going, apparently you've never played Final Fantasy VI, Earthbound, Chrono Trigger.
Like, you gotta make the game for the region you're in. Like over here, nobody's gonna understand the petting game. They're just gonna think it's weird and bitch about that. Like you have to tailor it to the people that you're selling it to wherever you are.
And that's kind of the challenge, is what actually Nintendo just came out today and said that Fates has sold 5 times better than Awakening did in the first 5 days. Like
Yeah.
300,000 sales already.
Yep.
So it's kind of one of those where you have a very, very vocal, and I'm trying to say this very nicely as opposed to what people normally hear me say, minority that are kind of feeling betrayed, but at the same time, when you can see that a game is selling like hotcakes.
Right? Well, the big thing is, one of the people that I was discussing this with, I wasn't like mad at him. I wasn't getting heated. He was, but I was like, dude, you're not telling your point. You're just saying, I'm a bad person for liking a game. But he's never even touched the game to play it. So I think if you really want an opinion on this, you have to play the game and see if it really affects it for you.
And I think that's a challenge. Like, you see all these people that complain about censorship now, and like I said, go play a copy of Chrono Trigger. There are a lot of changes in that. Go play a copy of Earthbound. I mean, that's almost...
Here's the thing.
Earthbound is heavily censored. It's interesting.
Right.
If you're a knight for the whole no censorship thing, take your kids to see Deadpool right now. Go and take them. If you won't do that, then stop bitching about censorship.
Well, and that's it. It's one of those where I hate that people call it censorship because it's not. It's editing.
Yeah.
It's self-censorship at best. But it's a better word for us to scream and get, riled up over.
But they didn't take anything out of the game that needed to be in the game. Like, they didn't take out the whole castle system because, kids can't have castles. They'll think they rule the house now. Like, no, they kept in everything, and they just changed a few things.
And I think that's the problem. It's kind of one of those things where I'm like, if people want to fist fight on Twitter and forums over this game, go for it. I have a 3DS, I have a copy, I still can't decide who's going to marry who, and that's becoming the most, painful decision of my life. So.
That's awesome.
I would say my girlfriend and I both have Fire Emblem, and, half the time we spend more time arguing, who's pairing who, and, trying to establish who are the power couples of this game.
That's so funny.
Who have you killed off just to be fodder so somebody doesn't die?
I think that it's interesting how the Fire Emblem series has finally gotten here in the U.S., and it's like, well, I shouldn't say finally, but it took a while. In Japan, they had it for the Famicom, and they had it for the NES and the Super NES, and we finally got it here. I think it was the Game Boy Advanced and the GameCube era was when the Fire Emblem games got here, and those games to me feel like classic Fire Emblem games when in reality it was like the 3rd or 4th generation of consoles that had already happened. But jumping topics again, what would you consider to be classic Nintendo to you? Now I know that our group of game huggers here tonight, we've got different ages between us. I might actually be the oldest of all of you guys right now.
Maybe. I don't know about that.
I would hope so.
I'm a young face.
Yeah, you sure do. But what would classic Nintendo? What does that mean to you?
Classic Nintendo for me would probably be the original Game Boy, all those titles, because that was the first actual Nintendo product I had. And what was it? Mario's, Wario's, Six Star Kingdom or whatever. You'll know
Mario
what
Land 2, the 6 golden coins.
Yes, that one. I played that thing until the cartridge burned out.
This is a great game. It really is.
And then I played Tetris, and once Pokemon came out, I was gone. I was this little fiend going, gotta catch 'em all! Whoa!
Benjamin likes his Tamagotchi.
Then I never, came back to reality from there. But also the Super Nintendo is also, classic for me. I
Okay.
wasn't around for the original, so
How about you, Tony? What's
Well, for
classic Nintendo mean to you?
I would say for me, I grew up an SNES boy. Like my dad ended up getting one, and it was pretty much ruining my life from then on. 1994 on is just a giant downward spiral. But like that was I spent so much time in Super Mario World, like trying to unlock everything I could. Even like my dad and I used to play Doom together, where he'd play and I'd get to backseat drive. But that's kind of where it all started for me. And like even it didn't come till later I even started checking out a lot of the RPGs that came out on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones. That's awesome. It's interesting perspective from you whippersnappers. Classic Nintendo to me actually would be pre-NES, and I know, like, wow, I'm old, but I'm in my late 30s. So, for me, when I thought of Nintendo as, say, age 5 or 6, I thought of the arcade games of Mario Brothers and Donkey Kong, and I thought of the Atari games that were coming out with the word Nintendo on them. Like, Nintendo was this game console or this video games company, that Japanese video game company that was so important and so great. Like, just the name Nintendo meant something so huge. And I remember the Atari carts for Donkey Kong and Mario Brothers on them would say "Buy Nintendo," and you were holding it in your hand, and the cart was like on the Atari or on the Coleco. It was Donkey Kong or Mario Brothers, and it was like, man, this says Nintendo on it. Like, this is a Nintendo game, and just thinking of that was so crazy because my first video game system ever was a Tandy color computer. It had no Nintendo games ever on it, but they had like cheap generic knockoffs of Nintendo games, and I remember playing those. There was like there was King Kong, which is a Donkey Kong clone, that was really awesome, and I just the mystique and seeing a Nintendo game for the first time, going to an arcade and seeing Mario Brothers and Donkey Kong for the first time was like, that's what I think of classic Nintendo. It was just like the company was this all-encompassing video games thing that was just beyond everything else. And one of my favorite things before I ever had an actual Nintendo was the Nintendo cereal. When I was a kid, Nintendo had a Nintendo brand cereal, and it was just called Nintendo, Saturday Morning Nintendo. And the boxes were regular size cereal boxes, but inside the box itself had two portions on each side.
yeah,
One said Mario Brothers and one said Zelda on the other side. And they were just Mario characters all over, and then Zelda characters on the other side of the box. And it was like a regular box, but it said two cereals in one. It was like, Nintendo, it's a cereal. Wow, you know. So you open it up, and inside there's these two cylindrical like bags, and one of them is Zelda, and one of them was Mario Brothers, and it was like, this is so freaking cool. So I'd go through like a box of that Mario and Nintendo cereal in like 3 or 4 days, but my mom would go grocery shopping every weekend and get more. And man, when I think of classic Nintendo, I think of arcades, I think of Atari, and I think of Nintendo cereal. It makes me hungry for it. I wish I could get some. It was
I don't think you'd want to try it though.
Oh, I'd try it.
Not anymore.
Disgusting, but I would eat it.
I love how he's like, what does Nintendo mean for you? Being a chubby kid. That's what it meant for me.
Well, you never know. Classic Nintendo could mean anything. That's classic to me, man.
I'm just saying it's funny how Nintendo, where everyone goes, the games and all that, and
I mean,
you're there going, the cereal was really good.
It was. It was awesome. It was awesome. All right. How about YouTubers that are really cool? What are some YouTube channels that you guys are checking out lately?
Whew. Markiplier is always #1 for me. Like, he's hands down one of the best video game content creators I've seen in a long time. Otherwise, I've been checking out a lot of the Late Late Show with James Corden.
Oh, that's awesome. Yep.
He's really funny, and all his skits on there are really really funny. Otherwise, nothing like out of the ordinary. I've been watching or trying to get YouTube Red to watch the new PewDiePie Scared series, where he goes in real life to places and to be scared like in games. Like he went to a
Interesting.
hospital and it's like they played it out like Outlast,
Hmm.
where he actually had a camcorder with the night vision and he had to go around doing things.
Crazy.
It was pretty good. Pretty good.
So I gotta admit, full disclosure, I've never watched Markiplier and I've never watched PewDiePie. I don't know what those are. I mean, I really don't know what those are.
Markiplier and PewDiePie do the same thing. They just, do Let's Plays of games. But Markiplier is more, I would say, down to earth
Okay.
to his fans. Like, he gives so much. Every year he donates a lot of stuff to, charities.
Sure.
And he's funny as hell watching him.
He's an entertaining guy, but he's also a decent guy, as opposed to, you think about how many, like, there are some YouTubers or people that do gaming on YouTube that are just awful, awful people.
Yeah.
So
I know one of those guys.
whatever do you mean? I'm totally not just saying this so I can get on a third episode. But like he is legitimately a ton of fun to watch, and especially for his reactions, they're comical, but he kind of owns it.
Sure.
In a way that just you kind of want to laugh with him, not so much at him.
Okay. Cool. Tony, what are some shows that you watch on the YouTuber?
There's really two I follow. One is a games critic by the name of Jim Sterling. He had done a lot of work for Destructoid and The Escapist. Now he's kind of on his own. But like every Monday he does like a rant video, which if you want to watch a big guy with a British accent just lay waste to game topic of the day, that's the type of thing you want to see.
Watch Total Biscuit. Wait, no.
No, we want to watch things that are good, Ben.
Total Biscuit was that angry British guy like 5 years ago.
No, that's that. I'm going to stop right there. I could go on for days.
Oh, come on, bring it. Bring it.
No, I'm personally not a fan. I do like what Jim Sterling does, but he's actually had experience in the game critic industry. He just went independent recently, like about 1 or 2 years ago. And then the other one I really watch is Pro Jared, because he'll actually do a lot of like Nintendo stuff. And like he actually does longer form videos, like 25, 30 minutes. And one of his recent ones, he actually broke down the Donkey Kong Country cartoon. Which, if you want,
really good. He's really good.
Which, if you want something that has not aged well at all,
no, that show's awful.
Donkey Kong Country is it. So those are kind of really the ones I check out. I occasionally watch Markiplier videos, but I think I ended up watching more of his Five Nights at Freddy's footage just so I could get out of ever having to play that game. Ever.
Yeah, right. So a couple of channels that I enjoy on YouTube, and I keep up with them regularly. One is Retro Liberty. They do the game series that they do, or game series, the video series that they do that I got hooked on was NES Pursuit. It's the concept of, like game chasers and those types of guys that go out and they go to flea markets and pawn shops and garage sales and go out and look for games and stuff like that. I'm interested in them, but I also like them to be nice people and not douchebags and not just collectors that are like looking up on eBay like, oh, this game's worth $85. I'm gonna see if I can get her down to $10, or whatever at this garage sale. It's like, okay, whatever. Like I like listening to guys who are friends who go out and just hang out and have fun, and they're like, man, I want to find a copy of Mega Man X for the Super Nintendo, or man, I want to find Pocky and Rocky on the Super Nintendo. They're just fun-loving guys that aren't looking to flip shit on eBay. They're just looking to have fun and add games to their game library. And the NES Pursuit is probably one of those where it's just two really, really funny guys who are genuinely good people and are entertaining. And they go out and they record things like that. They go to flea markets. They go and they'll go and like talk about the road trip, this hour and a half to go and find this guy on Craigslist who had, a box of NES cards or something like that, and they record those kind of videos and put them up, and they're really good. They're really well done. Retro Liberty is really good, and GameSack is another video series that I've been into for a few years now. Actually, Joe Redifer has been on YouTube for probably just as long as I have. I mean, we're talking 9-10 years now of videos that he's put up, but his quality and his production and his editing skills are like second to none. He's really, really, really good. He knows exactly what he's doing. I'm pretty sure he has some sort of education in film and editing, because he's awesome at it. He does like stop motion animations. He does all kinds of stuff like that. And as a joke, I think in like 2011, him and his friend Dave decided to do a game show where they just sat down and just bullshitted about video games and showed cuts of games and stuff like that. And it actually took off really fast. It was called GameSack, and they've had a lot of episodes where they just sit around talking about different games. They show game footage. They talk about secrets in games, all kinds of stuff like that, and it's really, really cool. And they've done a really good job with that, and I've been keeping up with that. I think it's really good. And then another series on YouTube that I really enjoy is Classic Gaming Quarterly, which is ran by my friend Chris, who's been on this show before. Actually, way, way, way long time ago when we first started this, he was on with us, and his show is really good. He's very, very busy. He's at school, and he's working his ass off in school to get an education, so he's not able to do uploads all the time. But when he does, they're really, really, really high quality. And his really, really popular ones right now have been these launch spectaculars. He's done specials on like the launches of games, and he goes through a history of like the first month of, say, like the launch of the Sega Genesis, when it came out, where it was available, how many games were available at launch, things like that, and then like the stories about how that first month of sales went and things like that. He's done a PlayStation one. He did a TurboGrafx one. I think he's done a Sega Saturn one. They're really, really entertaining. They're really good. The amount of research he does into it too is really, really awesome. I know he like watches The Gaming Historian, who is also on YouTube, who does a lot of really good stuff and really, really informative type of videos, and I think he tries to follow that kind of style of video. And Chris is just a really funny guy, so it comes across really, really well done. But man, I like those guys a lot. There's a lot of people on YouTube that I definitely check out, a lot of people I subscribe to, wrestling, video games, all kinds of crap.
For retro, I do watch a lot of Metal Jesus Rocks.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Don't hate.
Don't hate, just eradicate.
And for me, I forgot one other myself, Classic Game Room.
Ah, yeah, that guy?
Yeah.
He's good.
I like to check that stuff out, and they make some really good kind of quick review videos if I'm trying to look up, okay, I see this game in a store, what is it?
Right. Speaking of YouTube and streaming and stuff like that, have you heard of the recent fad of streaming Dungeons and Dragons or streaming role-playing online?
A little bit.
There's one that's really popular. Oh, what was that? What was that, Ben? You cut me off, Ben? What was that, Ben?
Yeah, I cut you off. What? You want to go? You want to go? Are you talking to me? Are you talking?
There's a group of guys that run a website called Geek and Sundry, and they have a game session that they run on Twitch, which is the way it works is it's all online. They have the DM is in one area, and all the gamers are streaming, sort of like a video chat or a meeting, like what we're doing right now, except for they actually role play, and they role play D&D or Pathfinder and a few different things, and it's called Critical Role is the game session. And if you look up Critical Role or you look up Geek and Sundry online, they have schedules out. Monday night's the game from like 6 to 10 p.m. and like Wednesdays and then Fridays or whatever, and they stream all this online, and it's actually quite entertaining. With some of the highest rated Twitch ratings you can find, where they have thousands of viewers during some of their game sessions, and it's really cool. You should check it out if you haven't watched it yet. I watched once, and I saw a gamer who was playing in the game group fall asleep. He was laying there, and he put his head down, and he fell asleep while the DM was looking something up, and snored so loud that they had to call the game that night because he just wasn't able to get him to stop. It was really funny. All right, next topic. What are some games that have been brought over from somewhere else, like the U.S. or the U.K. or something, that are really terribly translated? Like lost in translation, or games that were changed when they were brought over here in the U.S.
Mario 2.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What? I don't understand. Tell me more, Ben.
I like how Mario 2 in Japan was just a crazily harder game than the first one. And then they were like, we got to bring it to North America, and all those Americans are stupid, so they're not going to, understand it. So we're going to find a different game, slap our, pixels and graphics on it, and then ship it out, and they won't even know.
What?
And truthfully, we didn't know until the Lost levels came out.
Yep, it's true.
But I think that whole game, like, everyone's been wondering, like, why they did it, and it's because they didn't think we would be able to, play the game as it was supposed to be and enjoy it like they did over there.
It is hard as balls game. Super Mario 2 is a very, very difficult game. It also is not very impressive hardware-wise. It's really just a reskinned or hack. It's like a Mario hack of Mario 1. It's all the same music, all the same graphics, the exact same game. You run into a castle, and Princess is in another castle. You keep going until you get to World 8 when you finally beat Bowser for the last time. It's not an impressive sequel. It's not nearly as good a game as Doki Doki Panic or Super Mario Brothers 2, that's for sure.
Right.
Well, I have to say the game, Doki Doki Panic, that they took it from was good, but they destroyed Mario by slapping him in the game. Because it did make sense, and then they had to, at the end, be like, oh, spoiler alert, he's dreaming.
I love that ending.
No,
I really do.
Technically, Birdo should never be in the Mario universe, because Birdo's not even a Mario character.
He was in the dream.
And
But
then
he was also in Panic as well.
It was in Panic, but then also they put in Super Mario RPG, and at that point you can just throw your hands up and say, that's canon!
Nintendo does what they
Shy
want.
Guys and Birdo and
Yep.
Mario 2 is amazing.
Which one?
I think that Super Mario 2 or Doki Doki Panic is one of the best games. I mean, it's a shame that they never made a sequel to it that plays like it. Like, I would love to see a Super Mario 2 in the vein of like the new Super Mario Brothers games.
Yeah.
I think the closest game that they ever had come out to that style is actually Super Mario 3D World on the Wii U.
Right, because they brought all that back, which that was a ton of fun.
It's a great game. It really is. The princess floats. You can play as Toad. There's all sorts of stuff. You can jump on characters and pick them up. Like, it's got a lot of the elements from Mario 2 in it. And it just so happens to be one of the best Super Mario games to come out since who knows how long.
Super Mario Maker.
Mario Maker is beautiful. Mario
That
Maker
is an amazing game.
Drop the mic.
It's really good, yeah.
So what other games?
Well, if we're going to talk about games that are lost in translation and no one brings up Zero Wing, I'm going to be incredibly disappointed, considering that was a Genesis game that gave us the all-famous line, all your base, our belong to us.
They have set us up the bomb, Tony.
Main screen turn on. But that is, like, of course, one of the classic examples. And then if we want to even go something more recently, I had the misfortune of buying Sword Art Online Hollow Fragment for the Vita,
Ooh, nice.
which decent game, but when they translate it, there's a lot of "pleased to be making thee," and it's pretty rough. Like there are a lot of great screen caps of just things that kind of half make sense. So you almost wonder if they just kind of threw everything in Google Translate and said, "But let's just hope for the best."
Yeah, it's interesting learning a little bit of Japanese. You hear it when they translate the direct translation of things that they say. Like in American, you'd say "thanks for asking" or something like that. You know, like "oh, I'm feeling fine, thanks for asking." In Japan, they say "thanks to you." Like they say "thanks to you" all the time. And that's I've seen that. I've seen that in translation. I've seen things like
Yeah.
"thanks to you," or "thanks be to you," and you know, things like that. And it's just that's direct translation. That's what they know. So that's how they translate it over. But I mean, back in the NES days and the TurboGrafx and the Genesis, I mean, like how many games I beat or played through where at the end there's one word saying "congratulations," and I've seen that misspelled and mispronounced so many times. The usual spelling that I've seen at the end of games was "congratulation."
Oh yes.
That's not a translation problem. That's a spelling problem. When
No,
people
it's
are like,
perfect.
we're like, yeah, that's right. Playing the banjo, you know.
Yeah. Or Bimmy and Jimmy from Double Dragon 3. Yeah, there's good ones. I also like a lot of the early CD games, like Sega CD or the TurboGrafx CD, where they had to translate voice acting for a game that had voice acting in Japan, and in Japan they have like amazing, beautiful voice actors that they get from all their animes and all their TV shows to come and do voices for a video game, and in the U.S. we get the developers because they ain't going to spend any money on voice actors. And one of the best examples of that is actually Ys 3 for the TurboGrafx CD. And when the game came out in Japan, the game starts off with it's sort of honestly Ys 3 is a side story. It is very much detracted from the main sequence of story of events from Ys Book 1, Ys Book 2, and Ys 4. Like that is one concise consecutive story. Ys 3 is this side story that you can honestly ignore like it never happened because it has nothing to do, or at least very little to do with the main story. But in Ys 3, they have this opening that starts, and it talks about this ancient fighter who fought this big giant monster. And it's this dude with like wings and long blonde hair, and he's just got this huge sword, and he's fighting off this monster, and then they both die together or whatever, and it's like, oh, this horrible thing happened in like 1,000 years ago, and this is a retelling of that story or something like that. And when they brought it to the U.S., the people that were translating it obviously had no clue of what that opening segment was about. And in the opening segment, they had a very deep voice, an actual decent voice actor reading a script talking about the hero of the game, who was Adol Christian, who was going to fight the monster. And as they were showing the cutscene of this video from like 1,000 years ago with the blonde hero with the sword and the wings and everything, and the actor was saying like, "And there is our hero, Adol Christian. He is back, and he is going to fight the evil like a real man would." And he just goes into this horrible, awful line of dialogue, and it's like, what? And then the game starts, and there's a little super deformed, red-headed Adol who was supposedly the guy with the blonde hair in the intro sequence, and it was obviously lost in translation. They had no clue of what the intro was actually meaning, and it's really funny to watch. I actually have the Japanese version of Ys 3 because I hate listening to that intro in the US version so much, and it's also more expensive, but I'd rather listen to the Japanese language because it sounds so much prettier. But man, that's a good example. is Ys. Oof. All right. Boy, we're getting here. We have two more topics, guys. Two more topics, and we're out of time. So we got to go through these quick. Ben, you ready? Is Ben frozen?
I
We
think we
We
lost
lost
him.
Ben. That's okay. Good. We lost Ben. No, I'm kidding. How about best 2D PlayStation games?
Now, I'll admit, I don't play many of these, but we're just going to tackle the big one right now, Odin Sphere.
Ooh, nice. Is that a PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1?
That's a PlayStation 2.
Okay. Cool.
And probably the only one I have.
Odin Sphere, yeah, that's a really, really good game. There's actually quite a few of really good ones. I was thinking off the top of my head, Klonoa on the PlayStation 1, which is like a 2.5D, but it's still a 2D platformer. And then Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exodus are two really good games that are 2D side-scrolling games that are excellent, excellent. Fun games, great soundtracks.
Oh, yeah.
Man, if Sony didn't hate 2D games so much, that system could have really had a lot of better 2D games on it.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of one more. Tomba. That one was a pretty interesting side-scroller.
Oh, yeah.
It used a little bit of 3D, but it more kind of did it between planes.
How about Wild 9? Ever heard of that one?
Heard of it. I haven't checked that out personally.
It's from the makers of Earthworm Jim.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it was really, really good. Wild 9 was a great, great game.
I'll have to keep an eye out.
You will. Yes, you will. All right. How about we end it on portable gaming? What are some of your favorite portable gaming systems and games?
Ooh. Now we're getting really fun, but I mean, first and foremost, you got to go with Game Boy Advance.
There you go.
Because that had so many just not only good RPGs, but a lot of even Super Nintendo supported to it, like Breath of Fire. You had Golden Sun. All of the original Mario games ended up on there somehow.
Whereas a lot of people, especially Ben, talk about games like Pokemon, like on the handheld. My jam from back in the day, and it's kind of crazy to think about this, but this is about 16 years ago now, was the Neo Geo Pocket Color. And there was a game on that system called SNK versus Capcom Card Fighters Clash. And it is a very Pokemon-esque type game where you, instead of collecting Pokemon, you collect cards to make a deck. You play a card game against other players in a very Pokemon style where you go to certain areas and you have to beat the leader and you get these badges and you wind up going and playing in this big tournament at the end to become the ultimate Card Fighters Clash master. And you can make an SNK deck or you can make a Capcom deck depending on which game copy you had. There was a Capcom version and an SNK version, very similar to the Pokemon Red, Pokemon Blue, whatever. But it used actual cards from games from the Capcom universe and the SNK universe. And man, it's beautiful. Like, it's so much fun, and they did a great job on it. I love those games. The Neo Geo Pocket Color is I have this nostalgic tie to that because it was the first handheld that I really fell in love with. I had the Atari Lynx before that, and I really liked it, but there weren't any games that I sucked me in like the Neo Geo Pocket Color did with the fighting games and the Card Fighters Clash. I love those. Love those games.
And I'm right there. Well, I never checked out Neo Geo Pocket Color, but I need to check out that game at some point. But
so good.
This is going to sound weird, but the one that I got the most sucked into when I was a kid, I had a Game Boy Color and a copy of Mario Tennis. And that was developed by Camelot, which were the guys behind Golden Sun.
Yep.
But on that, it, of course, had a single-player RPG mode that you could play through. And that just engrossed my entire life growing up. Right. It was like the biggest thing ever for me.
That is so cool.
And I just thought games will never get better than this, ever.
That's awesome. Man, that is so cool. There was a tennis RPG game on the PC Engine or TurboGrafx too.
Quit reminding me. I keep looking at one of those going, oh, someday.
You should just get a Game Freak. Boom.
I should.
Those play PC Engine games. I heard the Game Freak even play Super Graphics games.
Like,
And
I've been
that's-
looking at one of those, and I'm like, someday.
Yeah, I'm thinking that might have to happen sooner than later. Because the Super Graphics is like $150 to $200 itself anyway, and the Game Freak play is everything. So
Yeah.
I'm interested. Anyway, thank you, Tony, for being a part of the show. Ben, I know you jumped off, but thank you for being a part of the show as well. It was a lot of fun. We went through 10 topics very quickly. We were very concise. We were quick. We were on target, and we stayed on topic. It was awesome. Thank you, Tony, for being here. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it, man. Check out Tony's podcast, which is like Skip Bow Breasts. What's it called?
Skippy on Games.
Skippy on Games.
And it's a blog because Lord knows you don't want me talking to a microphone more than I have to.
Skippy on Games. You can check him out on the blog on WordPress, or you can check out his Facebook page. We usually have it linked in our Game Huggers page on Facebook as well. Just scroll down in the Game Huggers conversation. It'll be there somewhere. Then you can also check out our Facebook page, Facebook.com/Game Huggers. Follow me on Twitter, which is _@_Joshua Turbo. Don't forget the underscore. It's super duper important or something. And we'll check you guys out next week. Thanks for being here, guys. Take it easy. Woo! Bye.
All right. Bye.